In a world of Democrats,
there will be time for them to make profits. Now's not that time.
And Republicans.
I've abandoned free market principles to save the free market system.
You need a voice of liberty. Look no further. You've found it. Tom Woods. Beware, citizen. You are now departing from the world of allowable opinion. The Tom Woods Show.
Welcome, everybody. It's Thursday, October 2nd, 2014, and we're talking to David Angelo today. David Angelo is a writer, an actor, and a stand-up comedian. And on top of that, as a side project, he has a fantastic series of videos on, believe it or not, economics. And we're going to talk about that today. David Angelo has written for Late Night with Jimmy Fallon, the Friars Club roast of Quentin Tarantino. He's been an actor on television. He's been a stand-up comedian. He's actually an Emmy-nominated comedy writer, and he actually won the Time Out New York Joke of the Year Award. And he's here today to talk about economics with us. David Angelo, welcome to the show.
Oh, great to be here. Thank you, Tom.
I've had numerous requests from listeners to have you on, and I had seen a video or two of yours, and then in advance of our conversation today, I started watching a couple more, and I couldn't resist posting one to Facebook. The one on roads I thought was great, but financial regulation, I mean, you've hit on so many great topics, and yet this is something you do more or less on the side. You have a YouTube channel. What's the name of the YouTube channel?
It's Economics, which is just a nightmare for any kind of web search. It's two E's on the front of economics.
Okay, all right. So youtube.com/economics with two E's, basically. So this is something, I mean, you are actually a stand-up comedian, but you're doing this on the side as a side project. That's an interesting story in and of itself. Have you always held more or less, I don't want to put words in your mouth yet until I really know, but more or less libertarian views, at least on the economy?
Honestly, probably. I think when I was younger, I was, more like I just had this kind of just general anti-establishment distrust in government, but I didn't know what that was or how to kind of formulate it into any sort of ideology. And I still don't really, I'm kind of like hesitant to say libertarian even. Just like any kind of ideology kind of scares me, as well as, it's the same thing with like government. Like it's some authority thing. Like I don't know how to adhere to the rules of this and that. So I try to just like float around and find the things that make sense to me. And ever since I started making money basically as a independent contractor and having like to deal with taxes and all that kind of stuff, that's when it's really been more personal, and I've taken an interest in it that way.
Well, how long have you been doing these economics videos in particular?
I started those about 2 years ago, so I'm not like prolific by any means, because I think I've only done like 14 or so, but done a lot of work.
Oh, yeah.
Like I do all the production myself, and the research is tough. That's a lot of times, like there's one on car taxes and stuff like that. And to find the actual, like, when you have to go dig up real numbers, it's amazing how many hurdles are in your way of just like trying to find the primary sources to things.
Oh, sure.
So like that just takes forever. But I try to do them. I don't know. I could do more, and I have a few more topics that probably could elaborate on that I think are interesting. But the other thing is it's like a lot of the news just keeps repeating, so it's the same. Do you ever find that where you're like, oh, this is the same topics again?
Yeah,
we're
exactly.
Talking about this.
And like, I made a video about it 4 years ago, and I have nothing else to say.
I know, yeah. You just kind of like, all right, I think it sort of speaks to the futility of the effort, but I don't know, like, how many more things to illuminate most of those kind of the programming issue I'm running into lately.
Well, the thing that grabbed me about you to start with was in the video on roads, your completely deadpan delivery, which seems to be the case in all the videos, in which you say that you wound up talking to a guy who was obviously a lot more knowledgeable than you were about government, and he asked you the question of whether or not you wanted roads, and you'd never really thought about that, and that really caused you to rethink everything. and of course, the road objection is brought up all the time. But then just today, I watched the video you did on financial regulation, and you've got Senator Tom Harkin proposing an amendment that would regulate ATM fees. And your response to that is just beautiful. So I know you're stealing from your own material here, but how did you deal with that?
Well, with him, it's like the irony of some guy getting upset about, or outraged, he's really mad on the floor of the Senate, talking about these fees that are just convenience fees that no one has to really even pay. And then he's from the federal government who takes literally a third of your income. Like, and he doesn't see that. Like, I find that kind of bizarre. Isn't that like mental illness? Like, can't you diagnose? It really is crazy to me. So I don't know how that goes through mainstream media without any hint of, like, no one even mentions that irony or like thinks that's crazy at all. Yeah,
there's and not only that, but and then the way you put it is that after all, we ought to remember. I mean, you've got this deadpan delivery again, where you're talking about these machines that we use voluntarily for convenience. I mean, you could in fact,
right.
and you have got a hilarious little animation of a secret trick you have to avoid ATM fees forever. Now, what's that secret trick?
All right, what you have to do, Tom, is you got to go into the bank and then you take your money out of the bank.
Yeah, that's it. No ATM fee the rest of your life, which is quite opposite of the federal income tax, by the way. There's no way to come up with some voluntary means there, a way of avoiding it that won't wind you up in jail. But the bankers don't put you in jail if you don't pay the ATM fees and you just walk into the bank and get your money. Tell us about your career. You're a stand-up comedian, and then somehow you wind up doing extremely, let's just say it, unfashionable videos. They're great, they're hilarious, they're well done, but they're not the sort of opinions that, most comics are giving voice to. So let's leave that secondary. How did you get started? How do you crack into a field like this? Seems very hard and competitive.
Into stand-up?
Yeah.
Or online videos. Both are equally...
stand-up seems hard.
Yeah, it is, actually. And then my real career is really writing for television. Like, that's where I make money. I do stand-up, but I'm not necessarily like, it'd be disingenuous of me to talk about how, yes, here's how good I've done at it, because I don't really I get a lot of bookings through, that part of my life either. So,
well, then how do you crack into comedy writing for TV, which, if anything, seems even more competitive?
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I think that just comes down to I write a lot of jokes and I do all that kind of thing. And once you get into once you kind of break into it, like get past the initial barriers, it's not that hard. So, my first job was with Jimmy Fallon at the late night show, which was about 4 years ago. And I just did monologue jokes there. And I did that for a year. And then I left and I went and did another talk show. I just do a bunch of talk shows, basically. It's kind of my specialty. But yeah, I don't know. I honestly, it's funny because I don't know. People ask me, like, how do you get into it? Like, they ask for their own purposes because they want to try to do it. And it's like, I don't know what that advice to give is. Because for me, it was just kind of like I sent in some jokes and then they hired me. Like, it wasn't a huge Herculean effort, really. But, I did kind of struggle for obscurity for a long time in the stand-up world, and I still kind of do, but at least I have the other things going on where I can still be like a professional comedian.
Right.
Whereas I'm not like trying to do these side jobs or whatever like I was when I was younger.
Well, to a guy like me on the outside, it seems like a really hard job. Like if you're a news reporter, well, there are always things going on. You can go out, find out what's going on, and write about them. But on the other hand, it seems to me it would be hard to just be funny all the time. Like that would require inspiration. Maybe you don't, whereas the news is just handed to you. Look, Putin did this today. You can go write about it. It's just mechanical in a way. But comedy doesn't seem like it is mechanical. Like you have to really, really work at it. And it seems kind of tiring to me as I describe it.
Well, it's tiring to me too sometimes. It's funny because there actually is a mechanical element to it a lot of times when you're just trying to do jokes. Like there are certain formulas and everything that people know, all that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's that difficult to, as long as you just like, don't you feel like sometimes you just hear stories and you're like, this is so ridiculous. And you know it is, but maybe like it's not your own like professional motive or whatever to like just go on some editorial rant about it. But like that's kind of what comedy is to varying degrees. And a lot of times people do it like out of their personal life or things like that, which I don't. But I just think there's so much craziness in the world that it's not that difficult to find, the relevant source material.
Yeah, I suppose so. When you put it that way. Now, how is it that you're a guy who, as you told me, you don't just go along with what authority tells you. You have a skeptical attitude, but that could lead you to go into all different sorts of video making fields. There are all kinds of authorities saying all kinds of crazy things. Why economics in particular?
Well, I think it's so funny because people spend their whole lives, like to me it's the craziest. Everyone works, I don't know how many hours a week, they're toiling away, jobs they hate, and then no one even knows what money is or like how the financial system works. So it just seems like really extra crazy to me. So I found that just the sheer like scale of how, what's that like political saying where it's just like it's the economy stupid or whatever. Like it almost always comes back to money. So if you look at that, you can see how like a lot of other things work too. I think that's what kind of like in comedy, like a lot of comics want to just kind of investigate like how do these things really work, and other comics might not do the legwork that I do in like actually getting the answer. They might just come up with a joke, which makes life easier. But I'll like try to figure out what is the Federal Reserve, like, because you hear these things and nobody ever really says it. No one explains it. Like even if you watch CNN or whatever that other one is, CNBC, it's like they don't really get into the nitty gritty of it. And
right.
So I think like that's something that I don't like to not know how something works. You know what I'm saying? Like for a long time, I didn't know how the club worked. Do you remember that thing, the anti?
Oh yeah, in the car. Right.
Yeah, I just didn't know how it worked, and I was kind of amused by not knowing it. So I went years not knowing how it worked, and I was kind of like proud of that. And then recently, I was like, oh, I guess it breaks the windshield if you turn the wheel.
Oh, that's what it is. I didn't know either. Okay.
Right. But, you kind of like, I don't know, people would put it on and all that stuff. But it's kind of like, that was like the one thing I allowed myself to not have to obsess about. But everything else, it's like, if I don't know how this works, I want to know how it works. And you hear about money constantly. So that was kind of a natural extension.
And you're right that if you tune into CNN or CNBC, they assume everybody knows all about how the Fed works or what it is and what it does. Or you get the sense that maybe some of them themselves don't really know. Like they kind of know. They know enough to seem sort of like authorities, but they're news reporters doing their jobs. But I would tend to think a lot of them probably don't know as much as they let on. I mean, I don't think more than 2% of the public could really tell you a whole lot about the Fed, and yet they all have opinions on whether it should be audited or what Fed policy ought to be. I don't. It seems like to me there's a disconnect there between polling data and the knowledge levels. Like I really don't care what most Americans think on a vast array of topics. I mean, for them to say, we don't think Obama's foreign policy is going to work, but we support it anyway, what does that mean?
Oh, my God. Yeah, exactly. I have the same view, basically, where it's like, if you actually did in one of my videos, I forget which one, but there's a poll that Gallup did, and it's 1 in 5, it's 20% of adult Americans think the sun revolves around the earth. So it's like, that's the that's the baseline for, what public opinion means. It's just nothing. I bet if you asked most people, they would tell you that Benjamin Franklin was the president. It's, like, just factual things. Like, you don't have to get into the opinion part yet. It's just like, people don't know stuff. Like, I think, I don't know, like, what the, it's just like, there's so much effort put in debating things that aren't debatable. And that's one of those things where when people talk about, well, the public thinks we need to do this. Like, I don't care at all. Genuinely, that's one thing, like, I wouldn't make a good politician because that would be my platform.
Yeah, no, exactly. People sometimes ask me to run for things because they like the show. Oh my gosh, you would not like how that would turn out, my friends. Now, when we think about the basis on which people make so many of these decisions, deciding on which people they're going to choose to implement the economic policies of the future, they make these decisions on the basis, frankly, of he gives a pretty speech or he looks presidential, which is just downright creepy. I mean, that is the creepiest of the creepazoids, the idea of looking presidential. It means he's straight out of central casting with the plastic hair and the perfect face and the rehearsed slogans, and that's what people want. That's what they think. We fought for freedom so that we could be ruled by a plastic man.
Right. That's the thing where it's like, what's the libertarian too? Because I don't know the doctrine exactly, but like on the view on what do you call it, like voting. Like, I think voting should be way more difficult. Like, you should have to, that course on American Ninja Warrior, where they have to run through this. Like, that should be what the polls look like.
Right. Well, now, just because you did ask, I'll tell you that there is a diversity of opinion among libertarians. I mean, most of them believe that, well, if there ever should be somebody worth voting for, it would be okay to vote. There are others who say it's a waste of time to vote, and there are others who say it's wrong to vote because you're giving your consent to this terrible system. I've never quite gone that far, because my counterexample is, if I were stuck in a concentration camp and they let me vote on whether I should be released, I wouldn't say, no, now wait a minute, you're tricking me into consenting to the system. No, I would just vote to release myself. Yeah. But there's no party line view. But the libertarian thing, I mean, you're so close, and I know that a lot of people, and I understand, they think of an ideology as being like a prison. Like, if I'm a libertarian, I've got to believe this certain set of views, but doggone it, you're so darn close, and we'd love to have you in our camp expressly. But if I were to ask you, though, about economics and where you got your views, would it be a matter of, well, this is just common sense and I arrived at them on my own, or do you read articles online, or do you just sit down and read free market books or something?
No, I'm not very scholarly really like that. So like I think I learned, maybe it's a little cliche, but like that Henry Hazlitt book.
Oh, that's great. And, I don't know anybody else in comedy who's read that book, so that's pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know. Most people in comedy haven't read a book, so it's not a stretch. The other thing is like just a lot of the primary sources. Like that's what I really like, and I'm so frustrated that I can never really get to them. But like when articles mention things like, oh well, this happened, and or like even Paul Krugman, kind of like I learned a lot from him just by like questioning everything he said, because he would put things up and make these statements, and then I'd go look at whether it's like the CBO report or whatever it is, and you go look at the actual source, and you realize like, oh no, he's like twisting this.
Oh yeah,
not right. And so you like learn in just that way. I think there should be like, you need to know the actual like source material, and the fact that journalism, like there was the thing I got really frustrated on. In most recent memory was Bill de Blasio the mayor of New York, had a tax return made public or something. And every article is about his tax return, but not one article actually gave you the tax return. Because I wanted to read his tax return. You know? That was my kind of art, or at least whatever he put out summarizing it. But I couldn't get any of that information. And people were just kind of commenting on it, but they wouldn't put out the actual numbers, because I want to go through his tax return. I'm really interested in that if people are going to put it publicly, because he's paying like a lower rate than me. He's a socialist. So I was like, what is he doing to get these deductions? And I couldn't figure it out, and I spent like an hour or two just trying to find the actual material that he put out. I couldn't do it. So that's the stuff that interests me. And when I'll have to search through, the government is also terrible at their websites. So if you try to find trade information and all that kind of stuff, it's it's like the mid-90s. You have to sort through these crazy tables on the web design part. And it's very difficult. So a lot of my effort goes into that. But I think you learn a lot when you actually look at the real numbers and not have someone tell you what's going on. That's a long answer to give you nothing.
No, but that is what more and more, that's what people should do, rather than take people's word for it, and oftentimes it's a tendentious interpretation. Now, if you were to would you consider, I don't have an invitation for you offhand, but if you got an invitation from a libertarian group saying, look, we love your videos, you think you could put them into a routine for us at one of our events, are you game for that?
You know, it's interesting. I actually got a offer from a college. They're I don't know. I think it's a joint college group, like the Young Republicans or College Republicans, and whatever the College Libertarians. That's an organization.
Yeah.
And they asked me to come to their school next month, and so I agreed to it, because I figured well, that's kind of interesting. Let's see how that goes. And so I guess that'll be the case study to decide whether or not I should do more of it.
Okay. All right. We'll see how it goes. Which of the videos that you've done are you the happiest with? Are there a couple that you think these are just killer?
I like the roads one, because I feel like there's not. I don't like when. I don't know how people respond to that. How are you going to come back with another argument against it? I feel like it's kind of like one of those open and closed things. And the same with, there's one on trickle-down economics, which I like that one too, because I kind of that was when I arrived at, it was one of those Zen moments where I thought you know what, we are doing trickle-down economics, how it's perverted in this sort of government-sanctioned way. So you have politicians speaking out of both sides of their mouth, where they decry this kind of stereotype of it, which is this Reagan image. But then they're doing something that's so much worse with all the stock market stimulus. So I like that one.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, because I'm thinking in the show notes, I want to link people to specific examples. So I would like to link to your favorites. Now, you have a website. What's the name of the website? Is it just your name?
davidangelo.info, but there's not much content there.
Okay, and it does not link to this YouTube thing, does it?
No, it does.
Oh, does it? Okay. So at least that's an easy way. I just want to get my people over to the channel in an easy way. We will link to it in the notes for this episode, and then also you can go to davidangelo.info and get the link there. Or if you just feel like typing, youtube.com/e and then economics right after it. All right, listen, I appreciate your time. This is good stuff. I'm glad you're out there doing this. Whether you realize it or not, in your heart, you are one of us. We think of you in that way, but we don't want to put you in a straitjacket. So we'll just say you're doing great work, and keep on doing it, because you are making a lot of us happy out here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And Tom, I know that you do a lot of. I've listened to a lot of your interviews too, actually. So I appreciate what you're doing as well.
Thanks very much. All right, everybody. Before we talk about tomorrow's topic, just a reminder, I'll be in New York City October 11th and in Boise, Idaho, October 25th. Get details on those events at tomwoods.com on the events page. TomWoods.com/events. For the New York City event, you got to get tickets. You can get 50% off those tickets using coupon code WOODS. Now, by the way, I go to places like St. Paul, Minnesota. I get a big crowd coming out to see me. That's great. But yet, for some reason, even though I get all these people saying, hey, Woods, you got to come to New York, I go to New York, and the turnout is kind of just okay. So I don't know why that is. Like, you'd think New York, there'd be a huge concentration of people. Like, why would these other cities have so much better of a turnout? I don't understand it, but that's just the way it is. So, look, you're getting 50% off the tickets. You got ample notice that this is going on. So make sure you're going to be there at Liberty Fest 5. Details at tomwoods.com/events. Now, by the way, when I make the pitch for the supporting listeners program with all the goodies that I've got, my new book, which will be out on October 14th, the Kindle edition will be automatically, more or less, I have to gift it to you, so you have to send me your email address within the supporting listener program. You sign in, you send me your email address. It's very easy to do. You'll see it there. But all you guys will get that book, and there are many, many goodies. My Ron Paul homeschool courses, all kinds of goodies there. Books and courses expressly for you guys, all kinds of great stuff there. But when I make that pitch, I want you guys to know that I myself support shows. When there's a show that really means something to me and I benefit from, I support them. So it's not, it's not just a one-way street here. Like, I send Scott Horton $100 a month because I think the Scott Horton Show is fantastic and indispensable, and Scott is scandalously unknown as compared to where he should be in terms of people having heard of him. Everybody should know Scott Horton. I send 10th Amendment Center $200 a month because I think they're doing stuff nobody else is doing and would not be done were it not for the 10th Amendment Center. Antiwar.com, likewise, I make a monthly donation to. So I like to help out things that help me out and that also that lift my spirit so that I see that all is not lost. There are people out there, there are voices out there that are talking about things that, aren't going to win them a lot of popularity contests, but they're saying what needs to be said, and that's very important. All right, tomorrow we're going to be talking to Diana Furchtgott-Roth, who is going to talk to us not only about the minimum wage, but specifically also about those fast food protests and who was really the driving force behind them. A very interesting story there. We'll catch you tomorrow, everybody. Thanks for listening.
The Tom Woods Show.